All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's Zoom session. My name is Jeff Schaff and I'm the Director of Talent Strategy here at the Toledo Regional Chamber of Commerce. This is the second session for our Talent Resource Week. This is something that we typically do as a full day or half day summit in the spring, and thanks to COVID, like many of our events, we've gone online instead. And this has been a great opportunity for us to get in front of members and work with our partners in the business and community to provide valuable tools and resources that can help you attract, retain, and develop your workforce. So today's topic is the Impact Coalition's Employer Resource Network. The session will describe how employer resource networks can help businesses improve attendance, retention, and productivity across an economically diverse workforce. The session is targeted to business leaders, senior management, HR staff, and all who are interested in learning how ERNs address the challenges employers face in recruiting and retaining employees and supporting them in advancing into higher paying positions. We have 3 other Zoom sessions over the next 3 days, which you can see here on the bottom of the screen. So in the blue is what you're in today. Tomorrow we'll have in hiring employees with addictions, micro internships, and employee resource groups on Thursday. There's still time to register for those sessions if you have not already done so. And then also keep an eye out this week for a variety of other resources that we will be sharing in this week's e-newsletters, including a new job board, instructions on becoming a featured employer on the Toledo Region website, and more. If you missed yesterday's Reentry Development Initiative, that recording will be up on our website by the end of this week. So look for more information on that. We're excited, like I said, for this morning's session. I'm trying to advance my slide. There we go. And it would not be possible without help from our sponsors. Our gold sponsor this week is Buckeye Broadband. Our silver sponsor is the Associated General Contractors of Northwest Ohio. And our bronze sponsor is the Department of Planning and Development at Lucas County. So again, thank you to those sponsors. We couldn't do this without you. A few housekeeping items. So if you have video capability, we would love to see your face, but we ask that you please mute yourself if you're not one of the presenters today. That'll help us with echoes and help us with general flow for the presentation. If you have any problems with the Zoom interface during the session, please send a direct chat message to either myself or Julie Sanderson. And if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in the Zoom control panel. The chat box is located along the bottom, as you can see on this screen. There's a chance that our presenters will answer your question somewhere during the presentation. So please be patient if your question is not addressed right away. We will have some time for questions at the end of today's session. Some other Zoom tips for you. Because we have presenters that are on a panel this morning, it might be helpful for you to be in speaker view rather than in gallery view. The gallery view, think Brady Bunch. Speaker view will allow you to see the person who is actually on the screen talking at the time. And last, our guests may be putting up a presentation for part of this. And if you have the grid up or the speaker view, you can toggle back and forth with the line so that you can see more or less of that presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderators for today's panel, Stephen McDonald and Lisa Smith from the Impact Coalition and Lucas County Family and Children First Council. Stephen and Lisa, thanks for your time today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. And I'm just going to pull up a PowerPoint real quickly. And we're not going to rely on a PowerPoint today, but we are going to periodically jump back and forth to slides on it. And let me just expand you because I can see everybody. And again, yeah, thank you, Jeff, for that great introduction. And thank you, Julie, for being here with us. We I encourage people to put on your videos also. It just really helps us see and connect with people as we're doing the presentation. And we are dedicated to doing this in an hour. So we're shooting for being done at 10 o'clock with the notion to do the most of the panel questions in 45 minutes and then have questions at the end. But I know I certainly welcome questions as we go through, although we may tell you we're going to answer that in full later as well. And in addition to doing the chat, if people just raise your physical hand, you know, I can see everybody. So if you're on camera, you can raise your hand and we can call on you for that. So this is about employer resource networks, ERNs, and we're gonna tell you about that today. And this is who we are. Again, you're gonna learn more about this as we go through it, because people are gonna talk about their roles and responsibilities around the ERN. But real briefly, what I'm gonna say is that ERNs are a solution to recruitment, attendance, and retention problems in your employee workforce. We address barriers that prevent employees from getting to work and staying at work. And when employers, basically the nuts and bolts of this is that employers join forces to pay for the time of a shared employee whose job it is to keep all their employees on the job. This helps your bottom lines. It creates stabilities for employers and for the community at large. So we have here Tracy Jasetic. She's going to talk about her role as in the lead agency, which is the employer of record for the success coach. LaTanya Ridley is the success coach. She's that shared employee that works for multiple businesses. Matthew Siebert has been on 2 ERNs, and he's currently at First Hospitality Group, Renaissance Hotels. And Lisa Smith, again, my colleague, she's the project coordinator that's in charge of developing these ERNs in and around Lucas County in Ohio. So I'm going to stop this share just for a moment. And again, I may go back to that later, but, and that stopped it, right? We back on gallery? Okay, so I wanted to start right off with a question for Matthew. Why should business leaders care about employer resource networks?
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you so much for hosting. I know it's early there in Toledo, and it's very early here in Chicago. So good morning to everyone. I hope you've had your coffee. So I want to start with an experience. So I work in hospitality, and earlier this week received a call from a general manager at one of our hotels, and they started in with, "I have so much associate drama." And I buckled in because we've been there, right? You've all heard drama in the workplace. So reluctantly, I said, "Tell me more." Well, one person's a great worker when they show up. Another one had baby mama drama and was an hour late. Another one's car broke down 3 times in a weekend, and that list went on. So I said, why are these things happening? Why are there so many challenges with associates showing up for work? And the answer, and you already know it, because you thought it, and I thought it, I once believed it. These people don't want to work. They're lazy. They just want a paycheck for doing nothing. They aren't committed. They don't care. We've been there, right? We've all thought these things at different times as we experience challenges with our employees showing up to work, completing their assignment, and staying. So we say these things to ourselves, and at some point we begin to believe it, and then it becomes an inherent bias. But it isn't true. You know this? Well, I don't think you intentionally hired a deadbeat. I mean, let's assume you didn't. Most new hires are enthusiastic, eager to be successful. Something gets in the way, something goes wrong, often what gets wrong is a life problem that spreads into the realm of work and kind of erupts like a wildfire. So now what? Do you just let it burn? Do you sacrifice the hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars invested in your associates? Or perhaps there's something else you could do to build stability. And that's really what we're going to talk about today.
Beautiful. Thank you. So Lisa, we work at Lucas County Family Council, which is a county department. And what attracted you as an employee for the county to ERNs?
Hi all, good morning everybody. So yeah, Stephen and I work for Lucas County Family Council, and specifically we work for the Bridges Out of Poverty team. And we don't have too much time to go into that today, and I'm going to give you the 2-minute answer to this question. But as part of the Bridges Out of Poverty team, we also staff an organization called the Impact Coalition. And that organization's mission and vision is to increase individual and community stability in Toledo, Lucas County. So we're a cross-sector organization that's really working with as many people as possible, from education to faith to nonprofit to government, to medical to mental health, across the city and county, to try to increase stability. And really specifically, we're working on cross-sector initiatives that we can work together to do these things. So when we heard about employer resource networks, it was really just the perfect fit, because what it does is it brings public, private, nonprofit together, and it works to stabilize employees, stabilize businesses, and then in turn stabilize the community. So for us, that was a win-win-win and a perfect fit for what we're trying to do in the community.
And how many ERNs are there that, I mean, we're working with and in Ohio?
Right, there are 6 that are up and running. We have 2 that are in Lucas County. We have 1 that's in the Dayton area that Steve and I specifically worked on, that was part of a separate initiative. And then there are 2 in other areas of Ohio that are being developed by a partner organization out of Marion that also has a license to develop ERNs. You have to have a license. So Lucas County Family Council and this other organization, Marion Matters, are the ones that have the licenses to develop them in Ohio. And then we have this one that we're trying to develop now that maybe you'll want to explore becoming a part of, that we're also developing now. So that makes 7 altogether. And we've been working on this since about 2016 and have developed a really close relationship with the parent entity, which is called ERN USA, which is really a company that's a grassroots company developed by a gentleman that used to be an HR executive who he started his own company, and he calls himself the Chief Disruption Officer. Like, he's really dedicated to trying to come up with innovative solutions to really help stabilize employees and stabilize companies.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to ask you about the structure of ERNs, and I know you really like this mental model that I'm going to share with folks. And Tracy, as we're going through this too, you may want to comment on this. So let me share that. So this is complex. Don't let it overwhelm.
Right, don't worry, we're not going to read every paragraph. What I really want to focus on are these like smaller squares at the bottom, or smaller circles rather. Let me get my geometry correct. So these smaller squares or circles at the bottom, we have the employees at the very base. So the employees are the focus of the ERN. And then, like we already said, it's a little hard to see because of the white with the light color, but the employer resource networks really are employer led. So the employers are surrounding the employees with support. And then the individual ERNs are sort of what we mean by the networks of employers that are all working together. And then you have these like building layers of support that are available to also help provide further support for the ERNs and also then for the employees themselves. So the lead agencies, and we'll have Tracy talk about what the lead agencies specifically are doing. And then we have regional networks. So the networks that are working together in Toledo also help each other. Those success coaches are networking together. Those employers are networking together. The lead agencies are networking together. And then Ohio ERN, all of us are working together and having peer support, and then up to the national level. So there's all these different layers of support, but it all really comes back down to helping the employees stay employed and helping the employers improve their bottom lines and create stability in their workplace.
Great. And Tracy, can you?
So,
yeah, go
sure,
ahead.
Stephen, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So we are the lead agency of Shared Success ERN, and we have cross-sector employers, 6 cross-sector employers from nonprofits to for-profits, hospitality, manufacturing, developmental disability employers on our network. So the success coach is LaTanya, and she's well-rounded to deal with the employees at all of those businesses. And for us as a lead agency, we work with the employers to hire the success coach initially, and then we are the employer of record. We invoice the employers for their cost share for the number of shares that they are sharing for this employee throughout the year. And we also work with them. We facilitate and help them host the monthly meetings between the employers, talk about the issues and barriers that the success coach is finding with the employees as she's meeting with them. And we help mitigate any and mediate any concerns, work with Stephen and Lisa really closely, as well as the other ERNs. We're on quarterly peer calls because these issues are across the whole country that all of these ERNs are facing and dealing with. So if somebody's got a trick and something that they've learned in their area and they've developed, we of course are trying to see, can we make it work down here to help reduce and address those barriers so that people can stay and retain on the job.
So one of the things that a lead agency can bring to the table is this experience with supporting individuals to get their needs met in a variety of ways. So when you're choosing a lead agency, you're looking for an organization that can make a big difference, that has a knowledge of the community, that has links with multiple organizations, and that has infrastructure and capacity to support that success coach. And you're also looking for an organization that is lean and well run and not too bogged down in terms of infrastructure, or I don't know, you know what I'm saying? You need to act quickly and be responsive to those employers. And Tracy, can you say a little about Lutheran Social Services, and also then what attracted you to be the lead agency?
Sure. So we've been in Northwest Ohio for 8 years now, 11, I don't even remember, from way back when, 108, almost 109. And we're in 24 counties. Of course, our headquarters are here in Toledo, and the multitude of our services is here in the Toledo area. We've had food pantries for over 30 years. We have Financial Opportunity Center. We work with the Homelessness Board in getting people housed from shelters. We are providing rental assistance right now through the city, through COVID dollars. We have mental health counseling. Of course, the Success Coach, we're part of the Community Hub program at Scott High School. We have a reentry program that we just developed in the past 2 years with a case manager. So we are well-rounded and have been meeting the needs and helping serve the community for those that are in this demographic population, as well as being part of the ERN. We're now able to, through LaTanya and the other success coaches, link more people to services, whether they're with us individually as an agency or others within the community, because we're constantly partnering with others to provide the best support that we can for these individuals. So having that relationship with some now new and for-profit companies has been a real blessing for us as an agency, because now we're able to serve more people.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to move off this just for a second and may come back later. But LaTanya, again, LaTanya is the success coach for Shared Success. And just what's a typical day for you? What kind of issues do you support employees with?
Morning, all. A typical day for me would range issues that would be transportation, housing, eviction prevention, food insecurities, childcare insufficiencies. Those are some of the things that most employees come to me needing to be able to stay on the job and be successful by showing up and mind in the right place. So usually a day for me would be visiting this particular site that I'm at, maybe attending their orientation for their new employees so I can start to grab those that may already have some difficulties coming in the door, or at least let them know that they have another resource there that they can rely on if they experience any kind of barriers or obstacles in their life.
Fantastic. And you work with, can you talk just a little bit, because we've got another ERN, as Lisa mentioned, we've got another ERN in Lucas County called Earn Success. And again, part of the reason for having this meeting, and let me just throw this in here as well, is that by the end of today's session, we hope that if you are a business on this call, if you're an employer, that you will actually follow up and get back. I know Jeff is going to send out some information after this, so you'll have our information. We're going to include a survey in there, but we hope you get all the information you need to know whether or not you are interested in being in an employer resource network, because we're ready to go on this third ERN. So just keep that in mind as we're going. But LaTanya, how do you partner with the other success coaches in Lucas County in order to get support and collaborate with them?
Pre-COVID, we made a plan to meet every week or every 2 weeks just to go over some of the obstacles that we saw with employees and find additional resources. We also share resources. So if I find that there's a housing resource, like when Luther Social Services came up with the COVID rental assistance, I forward that information to the other success coaches so that they could utilize it for their employees that they were working with as well. And we also tag teams. So if one of us is having an issue finding a resource, we'll call each other and we'll share those resources. So we make a point to stay in communication with each other and share resources as well as be a support.
Beautiful, thank you. And you have one of the key things that happens in ERNs is you have these monthly meetings where the employers gather to meet and talk about what's going on and share information. One of the things we say about employer resource networks is that they are employer-led and data-driven. So this is really about the employers coming together and deciding together what do we need and what's going on for our employees. So this is a picture of a shared success meeting and what that looks like. And recently the meetings have looked much more like what we're doing here today. Mm-hmm. But the piece of the data is this dashboard report that we use. And LaTanya, can you just talk about this a little bit?
So the dashboard report is something that the employers are provided with every month. Once I meet with an employee and I deliver resources and things of that nature, I enter it into a database called Salesforce, and this is where this report is generated from. And it talks about the services that were delivered per each employer. If they were delivered, if they're pending services would be things that we're still working on. Maybe I'm waiting on the employee to get me some information so that we can finish it or something other. It also talks about the number of employees that have came to me this month that were served and if they were new employees. We also talk about the request. How did the employee get to me? Was it an HR referral? Did the supervisor recommend them, or was it a self-referral or coworker? We also talk about the actual services. Was it auto repair? Was it career counseling? Was it child care? Was it support, child support? And how many of those are coming to me monthly and year to date? So you have a actual year to date of what it looks like, the trend looks like in your agency or your organization, as well as overall for all the employers.
And then we have this back page of this, which has the breakouts for the, and I know this is hard to see. There's a lot of information jammed on here, but it's basically, we've got the different employers. This is from the other employer resource network and Lucas County Earn Success for one of their success coaches. So it's got the individual breakout. And then, thank you, LaTanya.
You're welcome.
And Lisa, I know that, you know, one of the questions people ask is when sometimes employers are really attracted to this concept and they just want to get going with it. And they ask, why can't we just hire somebody to do this job just for our company, right? Talk about that a little bit.
Right. And, you know, like the network part of Employer Resource Network, the N is like my favorite, well, they're all my favorite letters, but I really love the network concept because what it is, you know, typically 5 to 10 companies coming together and sharing this resource and sharing their organization's resources as well to try to mutually help their employees be more stable, and then in turn help their company's bottom lines and help their companies be more stable. So number one, you're sharing the expense. So you're not paying for a full-time person that you might not need full-time. You're paying for the amount of time that you need based on the size of your company. So a really great benefit is that you might have a really small company that maybe wants a half a share. They're a small company. They only need like a half a day every other week. And you've got another company that's really big and they want 2 days a week. Well, that small company would never be able to afford this benefit on their own, but because you have the larger company, you can. And you also have the other resources that that larger company can provide. Secondly, you can identify the trends that are happening in your area across more employees. You know, if you're looking at statistics and you're looking at data, you want a bigger population. So you can identify those trends more easily if you have more employees. Also, you've got this network of connections that you're building with employers. You know, Matthew and his company may know about resources. TH Plastics in Bowling Green may have access to other resources. Schrader Tire and Oil may have resources, like, you know, and we see it all the time on, you know, on Earned Success, the other ERN that we're talking about. They're all DD providers of people to developmental disabilities. And there's 12 employers now. They have 2 success coaches. And so somebody always has an idea, always is bringing something to the table, always is bringing somebody in to speak that you might not be able to find on your own. You also, the biggest thing, and I don't have time for stories now, but we have a lot of great stories that I hope you'll ask about later. But there are a lot of great stories about the power of the network to affect change. One employee can't tell a daycare, I need second shift daycare. Sorry, I can't have my daycare open second shift for 1 kid. One company maybe can't because they have 10 kids. But if you have an employer resource network that has, you know, 150 kids and they all need second shift, then maybe you can. So you just have a bigger network of people working to affect change and potentially policy change in your community. And again, ask us for stories later, because that is really the biggest power of the network. And that is really the thing that we get most excited about talking about.
Thank you, Lisa. This is a great slide that I showed briefly before, but it shows, you know, we're all, especially when we're we're struggling to just keep our businesses going and achieve our outcomes. And you know, Lutheran Social Service has outcomes. All the businesses have outcomes that they need to meet. How do we look at the community in a different way? And that's the innovation of this concept, where you're linking businesses, employees, and community partners in a way that solves problems that get in the way. And again, that definition of LaTanya's job is, her job is to keep your employees on their job. And Matt, you have been on 2 employer resource networks in your history as a HR professional. And what attracted you initially, and how have you found the experience since you've been engaged?
Yeah, the initial attraction was one of happenstance, really. Some grant money was available to support companies in the developmental disability field to build retention with our employees. And we began this discovery process of an employer resource network. Like many of you, there may be a lot of questions. I encourage you to put those in the chat so we can get to those later. And I had a lot of those questions initially. We went through the process and learned more, found out what this did, as Lisa, Tracy, and LaTanya did an excellent job of outlining. We realized this is a resource that's very important. And many of you are thinking, you know what, I have an employee assistance program, an EAP. So why do I need this? Check the utilization of your EAP. When I did that, it became very apparent how necessary this was. As Stephen said, I started with one employer resource network and then decided to shift employers. And when I got to the new employer, their initial feedback, like I just said, was we have an EAP. The EAP received just over 1% utilization of the entire company staff, which is not enough. So we pushed for the employer resource network to round out the turnover. Because let's face it, the challenges our experiences or our employees' experience were the same, company to company. There was instability with transportation, instability with housing, food instability, challenges with getting back to education or children and daycare. All of those things, same things still existed. So it became necessary to start a second one. I was very glad to connect with Stephen and Lisa to do just that. What I will say now is I can't imagine going without an employer resource network.
Matt, while you're on that, thank you. How do you encourage employees to utilize the Success Coach?
You know, I think LaTanya touched on it just a little bit, and that's starting from day one. You know, when I talked with you at the beginning, we said, you don't hire deadbeat employees. There's eagerness and a desire to be successful. And so it's important to address challenges before they become so big that they're completely in the way of continued employment. So from day one, with the employees, we ask them what can get in the way, what might get in the way of you being successful. Talk with me about what could get in the way as it pertains to childcare, what might get in the way with transportation. What other things do you want support with? What's going on in your life that might become an obstacle at work? Sometimes I think we don't ask these until we see there being a problem. So asking this ahead of time, great for us. We send that information directly to LaTanya. We don't see it at all, but she does. And the Success Coach then can make the connection with the employee and develop the relationship. So to highlight the difference, the EAP, there's no relationship. You're picking up the phone and calling a stranger. With the Employer Resource Network, you're picking up the phone and you're calling a trusted friend. That's a huge difference when you have a relationship. It really drives success.
So somebody asked about confidentiality, and I just wanted to that's a big topic. I mean, if you know about there's a lot to that, but just briefly, can LaTanya or Tracy, how do you handle confidentiality?
It is strictly confidential when the employees come to me. If they come to me about a domestic violence situation, that is not something that I run back and talk to HR or their supervisor about. It is completely confidential. If they are mandated by their employer to see me, the only information that the employer gets is that we met and we've come up with a plan. They don't get the disclosure of why, the backstory of why, because we want the employee to feel comfortable with coming to me to disclose why they're having these obstacles and barriers in their life. And if they feel that I'm running back talking to their supervisor or HR, they're going to stop coming to see me, and we're going to continue to have that high turnover. But if they feel like they have a confidential resource that's going to be available to them, that they can say whatever to them and and know that it's not going to go anywhere, they're going to be more inclined to come to me, and then we can work on overcoming the barriers and obstacles to keep them employed, keep your turnover low and your retention high.
Frankly, there's a lot of stuff as HR managers that you don't want to know about, right? And so that's that success coach is able to deal with a lot of those issues. The other thing I wanted to say is that the structure of the network is such that while LaTanya is employed through Lutheran Social Services, and that's kind of a part of that firewall. She's not, she's paid for, the employers pay her wage and salary and benefits, and she's beholden to them, right? But there is that firewall around confidentiality. There was also a question about, is shared success engaged with preschool or local daycare agencies? What's the connection there, and how do you support that, given that that's such a problem for employees?
Shared Success, along with Earn Success, has formed a collaboration with Educare, which is now Early Learning Academies, and which we could call our contact over there, tell them what our needs are, and she will find which center has an opening for them. If they even qualify for JFS child care assistance, we don't even have to fill out the application. We just send them over there. They will fill it out. They have a relationship with JFS where if they qualify, the child can start within the next 24 to 48 hours, and they will send the paperwork over to JFS. So it eliminates a lot for us, that middleman paperwork, so to speak, that we can just call Educare and say, hey, I have a parent that is in need of 3 spots, one for a newborn, one for a toddler, and maybe a 5-year-old. And they would say, hold up, we'll call you back, LaTanya, which centers have an opening. They call me back, say, hey, our center downtown Indiana has openings for all 3. Send the parent over there. What are their names? I give them the names, send the parent over there. They usually can have their child in within the next 48 hours.
So you're basically paying for a staff person who has these skills that as a business, you don't have time or expertise to deal with.
And that's just one of the resources. That's just one of the daycares. So
yeah, and in addition, we recently, Lisa and I did a presentation like this for Early Head Start and their providers through Early Head Start. Because guess what? Childcare and daycare providers are dealing with the same turnover issues everybody else is. So they're struggling to retain their workforce as well. Matt, can you talk about when you have attendance issues, like somebody shows up late, don't you have a policy that deals with that in terms of referral?
Yeah, we do. We do have I don't like to call it a policy, more of a guide of how we handle those situations. So I think at one point in the history of HR, it used to be you're late, so you get documented, and that was that. And once you reach enough documentation steps, you're no longer an employee. That process was put on hold when we introduced the success coach. And the first step is, okay, what got in the way? But it's not punitive. It's a conversation of what happened, what got in the way. And then there's two things we can do. We can either refer the associate directly to LaTanya, or we can encourage them to go see LaTanya. And sure, LaTanya will tell you it's much easier if the associate reaches out to her directly, as opposed to it being a part of their growth with the company, part of their learning plan, maybe to have a session with LaTanya. Speaking back to the confidentiality piece, confirmation of that, the associate will go see LaTanya. She just confirms they saw her. We don't discuss what they talked about, just she saw her. It's an excellent resource to have. So either HR can refer them, manager can refer them, they can go themselves. And the other great thing is sometimes if we know someone's struggling, we can ask them, hey, would it be okay if we had the success coach give you a call? They say, all right, we pass the information to LaTanya and she'll handle it from that angle as well.
Thanks, Matt. So we also, and was that an echo or did somebody have a question? I think it might have been an echo. Okay, so we are starting, as I mentioned before, we're ready to start another ERN in Northwest Ohio very quickly, where we've already got, we need 8 shares accounted for. You have more shares, the bigger the company, the company, it's less shares. So if you have 100 employees, you may have a half a share. And you know, if you're interested in this, we'll fill out all these details. But we're basically getting ready to go with this. And I know everybody's busy. And you also want to know about cost. What's this going to cost per share? So Lisa, can you respond to that?
Yeah, typically the cost is going to be a little bit higher in the first year because the first year has a lot of development costs built in. So that's, you know, the cost for Stephen and I, the cost for all these initial meetings, the preparation of all the paperwork, the setup with Lutheran Social Services, all that kind of stuff. And the share cost really includes, so in the first year, the share cost includes that. And then the bulk of the share cost is the salary for the success coach and their benefits. And then the supervision and benefits for the person working at Lutheran Social Services. So that's a small part of their time is dedicated to that. And then there's also some small things. There's a license to be a part of ERN USA, which gets you all the peer learning and all that support and all those things. Well, not the dashboard reporting, but the access to the support, the ability to call yourself an ERN because that is a trademark thing. This is somebody's intellectual property. And then a subscription to this Successforce database. It is Salesforce, like LaTanya said, but it's a customized version of it. So there's a license to use that, and which is highly, highly recommended because that gives you customized, very robust reporting that is common amongst other regional, state, and national ERNs. So in the first year, the cost per share is typically somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 per share. In the second year forward, that goes down because the development cost comes out. So it typically becomes under $10,000 a year. I mean, those are approximations. In this case, the one that we're developing right now, we don't have a grant. Sometimes there are grants like Matthew was talking about when the developmental disability ERN Earn Success was starting, we had a large grant. And so that vastly helped subsidize the funding of the development and the share cost. In this case, it is fully funded by the employers. So, and we would be happy to share with you if you would like. We have annual reporting. Every ERN and the state and the nation gets annual reporting that's published by ERN USA that will show you your return on investment for the year based on share cost, number of services, most common services, and that ROI is typically very, 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 very high. We have the champion the champion employer that we have right now that really wants to get this ERN going and wants to purchase 4 shares. They're estimating their cost of turnover right now at over $1 million a year. So if you contrast that with, spending around $40,000 to $50,000 for 4 shares, nobody has to buy 4 shares, that's a lot, is more than worth it to them. So that is about the cost. Don't hold me to it, but that is an approximation, and we can get a pretty good approximation because Lutheran Social Services knows how much, you know, the success coach salary approximately is, and we know what those other costs are, but that's an approximate.
Well, and that leads into the next question, because part of the reason that cost is determined in the first meetings through the development process with the employers at the table deciding what they want to spend. So
right, because there are things there are things that you can add on, like right now there are small a la carte things, like newsletters and things like that are really great things to have, but some ERNs decide to have them and some don't, because ERN USA helps put those things together as well.
So that leads into those. I just wanted to say go ahead, Tracy.
Well, and sometimes too, it's the employers that are at the table. Sometimes they're willing to devote some of their marketing resources.
Yep.
And things of that nature. So it just depends on who's sitting at the table and what they're willing to invest from their businesses as well, to come up with a final cost per share.
Correct. We've had employers that have supplied their graphics departments to help come up with the logo for the ERN and different materials and things like that, and promotional materials, video services, things like that. So anything like that the employers can contribute in kind. And again, that's another testament to the power of the network. So one company might not have something in their arsenal, but somebody else does.
So I just wanted to have there's a couple more questions, and then if you want to stay around later, you can ask more questions too, because we still got 10 more minutes for questions, but 2 more questions before we get done with the questions that I had. So Lisa, can you talk about the development process? So if somebody's interested in being a member of the ERN, how do they go through the process?
Yeah, so the next steps are, like we said, I think Jeff and we can help support it, are going to send out some materials. And part of that is the survey that Stephen mentioned. And that survey is just, and depending on how close you have the information to your fingertips, is how quickly it takes to fill out. But basically, it's just some of those questions like Matthew was talking about, you know, things that are frustrations for employers, like, you know, have you ever had somebody walk out at lunch and not come back? Have you ever had somebody leave over a 25-cent pay increase somewhere else? Have you ever had somebody consistently calling off for childcare? Those kinds of things. But then there's other questions to help us understand what your turnover is, what you think your cost of turnover is, how many employees you have, what your average starting wage is, things that kind of help us get an understanding of what your scope as a company is, and then, you know, kind of the grouping of companies that we have that are interested. So that's step 1. Step 2 is, if you are further interested, the next step is to commit somebody, usually an HR representative, to come to 3 meetings, 3 one-hour meetings over the course of usually 3 months, once a month, to really just talk further about this topic and further understand, like, what is the ERN? What is this ERN? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the steps we're going to go down? How many shares do we want? What kind of success coach do we want? You know, how do we want to work together as companies? And just really to decide, do you want to go forward or not? So committing somebody to come to those meetings doesn't mean I'm on the ERN. It means I'm committed to learning about the ERN. And then once you decide, yeah, I do want to be part of this ERN, then we'll ask you to sign a letter of intent. And that letter of intent is really what we're using to drive hiring a success coach, because we want to make sure people are on board. Nobody wants to hire an employee and then say, oops, 3 people dropped out, we're not hiring you now. So, you know, that will be a step. And then there's a formal memorandum of understanding, which then gets used to start the formal ball rolling of invoicing and really getting the ball going. So that next step is really just to fill out an interest survey, and let us know that you want to be contacted further and that you're interested in coming to these next meetings to discuss some more.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Matthew, has your involvement in ERNs been worth it?
Well, I did it twice, Stephen. I'm going to say yes. It's absolutely been worth it. So as you all know, COVID had a profoundly adverse impact to the travel and hospitality industry. And every cost we had was scrutinized and questioned. And when brought up the question in Toledo with the general manager at that property, is this an expense we can cut? The response was absolutely not. We will not cut this. We will cut costs elsewhere, and we will make it work. It's a benefit our associates have come to rely on, and it's helped us tremendously build retention and build positivity in the workplace. So it's absolutely been worth it. I highly encourage you, if you have just a tinge of interest, to explore that further, to lean into your curiosity, ask more questions, and connect with Lisa and Stephen. They're fantastic resources and will help the process be beneficial for you and your company.
Thank you. So, questions. I'm so glad we have time for questions. Thank you, Cecilia. You know, we are so amazingly good that we answered all the questions you had, you know. I think that's...
Right. And forgive me if you answered this. I've been looking at questions and scrolling through to make sure we don't have any surprise visitors on the call. But
gotcha.
LaTanya, I assume before you can become the success coach, you have to have some sort of background training, correct?
I would suppose, but my background training comes from, I spent about 15 years in the education field, from a teacher to a curriculum director to a school administrator.
That's kind of what I figured, that you had some sort of a background, that you're either an educator or a counselor or something, because I can't imagine that you can just throw anybody in to be a success coach without having some great background and a great personality.
Yeah, and one thing about that is the key. Oh, sorry, LaTanya.
No, you're fine.
Okay. The key thing for a success coach is not a social worker, you know, because the job of the success work coach is to solve the problem that's keeping your employee from getting to work, being productive at work, or staying on the job and not quitting the job because they had a family conflict or something else came up. So it's not, the success coaches aren't social workers. Frequently, they actually come around the nation. A lot of them are HR people that moved into a success coach role. But you do need to be highly personable, and you have to be able to solve people's problems and build relationship quickly and then solve their problems. It's get them back to work. It's solve the problem and get them back to work. And that takes a really special person.
Resourceful and reliable, and highly relatable. And like Stephen said, build relationships. So build relationships of trust quickly. And that means I know if I go to LaTanya, she's going to do what she says she's going to do.
Right.
Because a lot of times, especially for people that have been involved in a lot of agency time, they can get used to feeling like they're getting the runaround, or feeling like people say they're going to do stuff, but then they don't get called back, things like that. So, you know, as LaTanya alluded to earlier, if that kind of thing happens and that trust is broken, and we know, you know, we didn't talk about Bridges Out of Poverty at all because we don't have time, but I would highly encourage you all, if you have not heard of Bridges Out of Poverty, please contact us about that as well. You know, we know that for people that, you know, a lot of people that are working, are under-resourced workers, you know, their underlying driving force is relationships. And so, you know, like Matthew was talking about, often the EAPs are underutilized because it's calling an anonymous person on an 800 number. Who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. Why do I want to call you up and tell you mine? And who knows where you even are? Like, how do you know who's going to help me, you know? So when that driving force is relationship, seeing somebody at your workforce, seeing somebody that you know is there specifically and totally to help you. And is somebody that will give you a hug, but will also give you a little shove and be the person to tell you, I'm going to do this much for you, but you got to do it too. And that is going to be there along the way with you, and it's going to really follow through for you is huge, hugely important for trust. And like Matthew said, for building the positive relationship in the company, and also building the employees' faith that your company cares about you. And that's a huge benefit just by itself. Like, to feel like my employer truly cares about me is a huge factor in retention, and a huge factor in how happy your employees are to be there and what they're telling other people who might want to work for you.
Who else has questions? Does anybody else have a question? You really want to hear from people.
I think we've hit the majority of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So yesterday's session, when we were talking about Ready and the reentry development program, Ron and Kathy from the Ridge Project talk about being supportive, and some of what they do is a success coach type service, I guess you would call it. But one of the things that they kept saying is, when you bring an employee in and the employee feels like their employer cares for them and is trying to help them be better, then they bring in their friends and they bring in their family, and it becomes an automatic recruiting tool. So an ERN, I have to believe, operates the same way. If Latanya helps somebody and helps them through a rough situation, then when an opening comes available, then maybe their sister wants to come work there, or maybe their significant other or a friend. And to me, that's how you get some of your best talent, is when someone is selling the company for you.
Right. It's word of mouth, and it's relationship where
Absolutely.
friends are recommending friends and saying, this, you become an employer of choice. That's the term, right? Employer of choice. But this is like a lot of your employees who you're churning through with high turnover don't understand that term, but they feel it. Latanya, you had a story about an employee. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about, where one employee dragged another employee into you.
Yes, I've had a few of those since that one. But yes, I did have an employee that I had a relationship with that had came to me before. She said, and her initial interaction with me is, I don't know what I need, but I know I need something. And so we got to talking, and then so she went, and there was another employee out there on the floor with her that was just telling her all the things that were going on in her life. She said, why are you telling me? You have a success coach. And she literally drug her by the arm in there and said, this is the person you need to talk to. And since then, and this employee comes to see me when I'm there, just, if nothing but to say hi. Things are going great, Latanya, thank you. Just wanted to check in and say hi. And those are the type of relationships and bonds that I try to build with the employees, because then they're comfortable coming to see me, whether they need anything right then or not, or if it's something drastic that's going on in their life. They're comfortable coming to me and letting me know what's going on.
Thanks. So Jeff, you're gonna send stuff out to folks so that they can follow up and have our information. And
yes, absolutely. So after today, we will process all of the recording, and we will make sure that we have that up by the end of the week. And then the information that you guys provided me earlier in the week, along with the survey, will be sent out as a follow-up to everyone who's on the call. And it will also be posted on the Talent Resource Week website. As a reminder, we have 3 sessions left. I'm going to put this slide back up here. Hopefully everyone can see it. This afternoon, we'll have hiring employees with addictions. Tomorrow, we'll have micro internships and how your company can use them. And then tomorrow afternoon, we'll have employee resource groups, best practices. Stephen and Lisa, I want to say thank you. We spent quite a bit of time making sure that we had everything ready to go and that everything was going to run smoothly. I think we did a great job. Tracy, Latanya, and Matthew, thank you for being panelists this morning. One of the things that we will send in the follow-up is Lisa and Stephen's information, so that if you want to get in touch with them and learn more one-on-one about employee resource networks, you can do that. But that ends our time for today. I think we did a pretty good job. By the time that you guys took it over, we're within our hour time frame. So thank you again, everyone, for being here today. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you this afternoon or sometime this week.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This went really well. We really appreciate it.
Thanks
everybody
everyone.
for
Julie,
joining.
and the chamber, thank you for
Yes.
putting this on.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks,
Goodbye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Nice job, everybody.
Thank you. Good job.